What is happening out there, Roto Scouts, football and basketball fans? Welcome to the Dual Threat Show for Thursday, gang. A little football, a little basketball, 2 games of one game of the other, but in the other order, 1 game of one, 2 games of the other. I'm going to talk football first. Really shitty football game. Then we're going to talk basketball. A little bit more interesting. The 2 basketball games. Pretty solid totals in those. Should be fun. Just mashing together some lineups for both of these slates. Basketball obviously getting started a little bit earlier. We'll be done in time. I just figured just mash the 2 shows together. I was like, all right, you could do like 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, then 4:30 to 5:30, because I wanted to leave a buffer in case I didn't want to restrict it to just an hour about one. Didn't really know which way to put it, so I just figured, screw it. Who cares about clicks and likes and so on and the algorithm and everything? Just make it easy for everybody. Don't make people switch places. Don't make me switch places or have to keep to a schedule. Let's just put one big stream up there and talk about everything. So that's what we're here for. Got Cujo Blue stopped by. Don't know if Cujo is still here, but thank you for your service, buddy. Cujo thanks any veterans who might be out there for their service. And right back at him, Cujo is a United States Army veteran. He will be attending some programs tonight. Veterans Day this weekend, Saturday on the 11th. Believe we're celebrating tomorrow as like federal holiday-wise. But the actual holiday's on the 11th over the weekend. I did stop to check that when Cujo dropped his note in. I was like, wait, it's not today, is it? But cool. So attending some programs tonight, but stop by to show some love and support for everybody. So that's awesome. But yeah, thank you for your service, buddy, and any other veterans out there. Absolutely. And yeah, as Kevin's saying, trying times now for the service, along with the men and women that serve. So yeah, definitely more important than a lot of other Veterans Days to keep people in our thoughts and hope for the best. It's not exactly a tame, sane world right now, regardless of which side you're on. Actually, there are pretty clear-cut right and wrong sides to be on right now on a lot of things, but hey, we'll continue on. Trey's here. What's up, Trey? Trey's got no class today. He's here all day. I love it. I assume he means like educational classes. I always found Trey to be like a classy kind of individual. Seems like a nice guy. Always friendly, always helpful, making good suggestions. So you got class every day, Trey, but you're not being taught anything today, maybe institutionally. Greg Biancone's here. What's up, Greg? It's going pretty well, buddy. It's been a quiet Thursday. I mean, easy to put stuff together for today. Just kind of open stuff up, ran the quick updates. 1 game of football, 2 games of basketball. We're up and running pretty quickly. So it's been an easy day. Played some Starfield earlier. Hung around. Smoked a little earlier. Hung around. Quiet afternoon. There's a dude been working, I think I mentioned him on one of the shows. Been working like right outside my windows here and like redoing the front of my building, I guess. And he's just been out there like right in front of my windows all day, which is fun. And I can hear his little radio. He's got, I think, like a little radio playing some tunes. I can't tell what it is. It's just like when you hear that like just faint noise. At first I was like, my TV's on mute. Like, why can I still hear it? But it's from out there. Trey's rolling something up right now. Excellent. Kevin O, better than last night. Kevin O, dude, I was saying it in the Discord earlier. That is very likely going to be the worst NBA slate of the year. That was so bad. With every single piece of good chalk before the slate failing. With Christian Wood, the top pivot, the top post lock swap, completely going bust. 6 points or whatever. Guys like Giannis getting tossed. LeBron not really doing anything when he slotted into some lineup. Like Hawkins going completely bust. Brogdon leaving the game halfway through with an injury, not returning for the second half. Just a disaster of a slate. You couldn't write it to be any more disastrous. And it was just ugly going in too. Like we were talking about it yesterday with those couple of $3,000 guys that were just like critical in Sims and everything. And I saw Alex actually tweeted about it as well. Just saying, Alex from over at Stochastic, just saying like, you know, hey, this is maybe salary a little bit tight when I'm playing guys that are projected for 12 points at $3,000 just because they exist. And that's exactly what we were talking about. So everybody was dealing with that same thing with those guys yesterday. Grant saved the night for Tizzleman. Yeah, I was pissed. I had fair chunk of him. I had a good chunk of Cade Cunningham before the swaps, and then went down to less after the swaps, but still had some. So I had like good pieces, but then it wasn't a normal night where it's like a lot of good pieces and one thing didn't quite get where it needed to be. It was like, oh, that would have been good if these four guys didn't all go completely bust that were supposed to be just like secure pieces of chalk. But whatever. That's why we play. That's why we grind and move on to the next day. Daniel Pope, what's up, buddy? Figure doing NBA first, but I have a unique lineup for the NFL game tonight. I was thinking of doing NFL first. Just let NBA get another hour closer to lock, and whatever news might pop up. Where NFL outside of as of 4 o'clock, we'll know for sure that what's his face isn't playing, but he's not going to be playing. But I was thinking we'll do NFL first, and then we'll jump to NBA. So I'm definitely curious to hear your NFL lineup thoughts. And as Daniel Pope points out, hit the like button. Pours a lot of time into this and deserves all the help we can give. Well, I do put some time into it today. Like I said, today came together real easy. Today's just like a lot of point and click stuff today. But yeah, days like yesterday for 14 games, that's a labor of love some days for sure. But let me just hold on one sec. Let me just pop this up, grab the news. So last I saw, that hadn't officially come out with, they had the chance to designate Khalil Herbert to return from IR. If they did it by 4 o'clock, he'd be eligible today. But the expectation was that they weren't going to. That's the only, I think, relevant piece of news that we're waiting on from the NFL game. And it doesn't look like anything's come out yet. But I 100% did not project him, do not expect him to go. That would be a total surprise if he plays. So let's jump to this. Figured out that if I zoomed it in a little bit, it would look a little bit better. And we could actually fit on the screen. I don't know how it'll look for basketball. I don't think we'll be able to fit as much. But for football, this is like, on this screen anyway, it at least fits, which is a plus. Trey wants to know, can we go to Cole Kmet for captain? I don't see why not. I think it's a pretty wide open day given how these two teams both kind of suck. And there's okay skill players. There's okay wide receivers. Probably no DJ Shark. He's the other piece of news. He's been doubtful, though. And like he'd be another one that would be a total surprise if he plays. So you get a little like upward mobility out of incredibly cheap Terrace Marshall at 400, 600 on the DraftKings slate. He's 7,000 on FanDuel, appropriately priced. At the discount on DraftKings, I think he's going to be kind of relevant. And he's not in like a crazy, like definitely going to be a high scoring play or sure to work out or anything like that. He's not very good. But at that price, given the involvement I would expect for him, I do think that he was looking a little bit under-owned in the captain role as just the cheap multiplier, put something there kind of a play. But he's along the lines of like those $3,000 basketball plays that we were talking about yesterday, where it's more like it makes other things work, but it might not necessarily actually go that way. Looks good on this side of lock, doesn't really work out in practice all that often. But when it does, that vaults you up, obviously. But yeah, I do think to get back to your question, Trey, I do think that it is a day where you can get to a variety of different things at the captain spot and take advantage of some of the low pricing. And you've also got like fairly low pricing on the quarterbacks, like Bryce Young being that much cheaper than Adam Thielen is kind of interesting. 14,700 versus 17,700 in the captain role. Thielen by far the most expensive player. He's also, oddly to me, the most, at least on one site's ownership projections, the most popular captain play, which I found weird because, you don't typically see the highest overall salary succeed. You don't typically see salary that is that high succeed in the captain role all that often. So I'm kind of interested in getting different in that captain spot. You've obviously got, touchdown dependency to Not even actually, it's not even fair to say that Cole Kmet's totally touchdown dependent because he sees a decent amount of targets and he's got opportunity to rack up a fair amount of catches, especially in a game like this, put up some yardage. But he does, what I was going to say, have multiple touchdown upside. I also like the fact that they've got, not that they ever really look to them or that they've come in and scored any touchdowns this year, but I do like the fact that they've got Robert Tonyan and Mercedes Lewis on that team. Just, how I feel about these showdown tight ends, these down depth chart tight ends. I think if you're doing that, Robert Tonyan's the guy. He's been running a few more routes a game than Mercedes Lewis. He's seen a target in most of their games, gotten a catch in most of their games, 11, to 10, 11 yards, but hasn't scored yet. Has only been targeted in the red zone once all season. It really is the Cole Kmet show, but I do think that there's a little value in a showdown slate of including a guy like Tonyan. I don't know that I'd go all the way down the board for Mercedes unless something happened, but he's been out there. He's run a couple routes. We'll get into it. But yeah, you definitely want to create a spread. Mingo's on that list. I think the defense can definitely be on that list. The kickers can probably be on that list in limited shares. But when you're talking about a lot of those plays, a lot of the skill play, the moderate talent skill players on these teams, and then like the kickers and the defenses are owned in the low single digits in those captain spots. So it's easy enough to just say, I'm going to take 15 lineups and dedicate them to Jonathan Mingo captain shares. It's 10% of your lineups if you're playing 150. It'll probably double the field's exposure, triple the field's exposure to him in the captain spot. And now we're saving money. We're paying $4,200 for a captain who is going to be acting as their number 2 wideout today. Going to be targeted and going to be, if anything goes to plan for Carolina, he'll be relevant. So I do like making plays like that. Kmet's on that list. He'll be one of the more popular guys on that list. He's also not incredibly cheap. I do kind of like the idea of getting to your Mingos. Well, maybe he's the only one that really stands out because the other ones are like the kickers. Foreman's cheaper. So yeah, 99 is not, I guess, all that bad for Cole Kmet because Rashawn Johnson's not going to really outpace him for even it ownership. But yes, long answer. I do like that play. Just looking at this board, Bryce Young being highly projected again doesn't fill me with joy. Completely failed the last time we played him, which was just this past Sunday. We talked about it a lot going into that slate, right? I wanted anyway, to go with the CJ Stroud and Bryce Young when everybody was going to the guys who were taken in the 5th round of the same draft this year and going to a lot of just, moderately talented to pretty bad quarterbacks who we've seen before. I was going to the 1 and 2 pick of this draft, and I thought it would work out. It definitely worked out for the CJ Stroud side of that. I didn't have quite enough of that, but our pal Dennis, XX Cubs fan, did, and that paid off nicely. Bryce really let me down. I thought he was going to have an opportunity to have a game. I think he's got a decent opportunity to have a game again today. It's not like Chicago's good against the pass at all. 7 yards per pass attempt allowed so far this season ranks them 26th. They're also allowing more than a touchdown a game, more than 2 touchdowns a game through the air. What is it? Oh, now I don't have it as I have the totals. So they've allowed 20 touchdowns in what? 8 games? Not 7 games? 9 games? So they're I think it was 2.2 is what it worked out to. So I do think there's opportunity for Bryce Young to succeed here. And by virtue of that, obviously, we get Adam Thielen at a pretty good projection. I think it creates opportunity for Mingo down the board. You get Terrace Marshall involved at very, very cheap pricing on DraftKings, a little bit more reasonably priced on the FanDuel slate. The mix of crappy tight ends between Hayden Hurst and Tommy Tremble is, of course, in play. You've got the multi-headed backfield with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. What I don't love about that, though, is the Bears are actually pretty good against the run. 3.3 yards per rush attempt is first in the league. They're allowing less than a touchdown per game. So I don't really want that much I'll have some because it's a showdown slate, but I probably want to be below the field on Chuba Hubbard. I don't love Miles Sanders. He had a decent day in a handful of carries the other day. It was 30-something yards on like 6 touches, but not really involved, not really getting the ball, especially on FanDuel for 9,500. I'd just rather go to like some of these guys. That's an expensive price. He's correctly priced on DraftKings, if nothing else. Well, actually, not even really, because these relative to this is the same relative difference. So yeah, I really don't like Miles Sanders. Taking a guy who's barely involved, hasn't been good all year when he was involved, going up against the top defense at limiting yards per rush attempt, doesn't really bode well. I just like getting to the volume passing too for Carolina. Carolina pass attempts, 39 last week, 31 the week before, bye-in week 7, 38, 41, 32. Now, he's not necessarily completing all of them. He's not throwing for tons and tons of yards or tons of touchdowns, but the volume's there for Bryce Young and his receivers. So going up against a defense this bad against the pass, I think it's easy enough to get invested here, and I like the price. DraftKings 14-7 in the captain spot. He was down board a couple spots too by ownership. I think Bryce Young is under-owned for that price in the captain spot on DraftKings. I would be looking to be over the field. And you guys know how I feel about quarterbacks in the captain spot. It's just because that's a little bit cheap, going to be throwing the ball that many times. That said, last time that I was endorsing him, which was just this past Sunday, he threw 3 interceptions, threw 2 touchdowns to the wrong team. 2 defensive touchdowns scored against him. 1 touchdown to his own team, 173 yards, 24 of 39 through the air. Tyson Bagent on the other side, 18 of 30 this past weekend, did throw 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 220 yards. Neither of these guys is very good. At least Young, I think, is going to be good. Bagent going up against the 25th ranked defense on the ground, 4.4 yards per rush attempt, 16th ranked defense through the air, 6.5 yards per pass attempt. Should be plenty of opportunity for Chicago to do some damage here as well. As mentioned, probably no Khalil Herbert, so we've got Donta Foreman leading the way again. You've got Rashawn Johnson grabbing a few touches. You've got Darrington Evans also lurking there to potentially steal some touches. DJ Moore, obviously the premium receiver on that team. What's he done the last couple of weeks? We're going to get into looking at the positional stuff in just a half a second, but DJ has been fairly limited since that big week 5 game, that 230 yards and 3 touchdowns game. Hasn't gone beyond 55 yards in any of those games. Had one game in week 7, had 8 catches, but 5 or fewer in each of the 3 other games. Hasn't cracked 10 targets. It's been a lot more limited in playing with Tyson Bagent here. So that's something to keep in mind with DJ Moore. He's still fairly highly priced. Projects out well. It's not a good defense he's going to be going up against. A breakout week for DJ Moore could definitely be on tap here. The Bears D and Cairo Santos both definitely in play. At the same time, I do think that you can play some Carolina D. It's not like Bagent didn't just throw multiple interceptions last week as well. So there's plenty of reason to go to the defense on that side. And Eddie Pinheiro, perfectly playable kicker on that side. Down the board, outside of after Kmet, you've got Mooney. You've got Tyler Scott at a very cheap price. Doesn't project out all that well. You've got the multi-way backfield. And then you get into the tight ends. You might get Equanimeous St. Brown. He's questionable. May or may not play coming back off the IR. It's pretty limited on the Chicago side with what you might want to go to down board here. Looking at some of the ignore these rankings. These are still from last week. And obviously not relevant to a showdown slate. Oh, whatever. Ignore those rankings. So again, 256 yards and 20 game, 256 yards a game and 20 touchdowns so far on the year. So 2+ touchdowns a game, 6.8 yard defensive ADOT allowed by Chicago. Bryce Young should have the opportunity to put up a pretty good game here. They've only gotten 10 sacks on the season, 6 picks, 15% pressure rate, despite blitzing 23.9% of the time. He's throwing the ball 36 times a game, 196 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Not great. 3.2 air yards per attempt, completing just 5.5 yards per pass attempt overall on the season. By contrast, even Tyson Bagent is at 6.3 yards per pass attempt. This is one of the lower marks in the league for somebody who's played as much as Bryce Young has, who's thrown the ball as much as Bryce Young has. 6.4 intended air yards per pass attempt. He's trying to throw the ball a little bit further downfield, just not really succeeding. They throw the ball a decent amount in the red zone. There's nothing to really worry about as far as volume, as far as opportunity. He has the opportunity to throw touchdown passes, has the opportunity to rack up yards. Just has to stop throwing it to the wrong team. They've got to keep him upright as well. That would help. 2.4 rushes a game, 117 yards, 6.9 yards per rush attempt. Nothing really to focus on there. Has the ability, but hasn't really been breaking runs. Bagent, 178 yards a game. He's thrown... that's the defense he's going up against. Defense is allowing 178 yards a game. They've given up 11 touchdowns, roughly 1 and change a game. 17 sacks with a 20% pressure rate. Not crazy threatening. But again, I do think on the back of just going up against these two quarterbacks, both defenses are in play. He's thrown 3 touchdowns. He's thrown twice as many interceptions. He's thrown for 174 yards a game, only throwing the ball 27 times a game. Again, a limiting impact on DJ Moore so far. He has run the ball in twice. Gives him a little bit of individual upside, but not great for his receivers. Again, DJ hasn't gone over 55 yards with him yet. Going by some of the running backs. Last week, Hubbard carried the ball 16 times, put up 58 yards, saw 46 snaps. Miles Sanders saw 18 snaps, carried the ball 6 times. He gained 39 yards on the 6 carries. He was targeted 5 times, caught 3 of them for 22 yards. So there's a little bit of involvement still for Sanders. But again, just going up against a team that's been smashing against at least limiting rush yardage, limiting rushing touchdowns. I don't love going to this backfield anyway. And I don't love going to somebody who's just so limited for touches and opportunities. Hubbard was out there, again, 46 snaps last week. Carried the ball 16 times. He also ran 29 routes, was targeted 6 times, caught 4 of them. Only 9 yards through the air, not great. Didn't get in the end zone, not great. But he was carried the ball twice in the red zone. Carried the ball 5 times in the red zone the week before. He's got opportunity galore. He's become the lead back in that backfield. So I do think he's worth going to. 8,000 on DraftKings. If you're going to one of the running backs from that backfield, I think it's Chuba Hubbard most of the time. Sanders will be way less owned because of that, of course. So for showdown plays, you can mix and match some Sanders in there for sure. But Hubbard has the clear-cut lead opportunity in that backfield. Raheem Blackshear took 7 snaps with the offense last week. 14 came on special teams. Not really involved. He caught 1 of 1 targets for 5 yards. Carried the ball once. Did not gain a yard. Not overly involved at all during the season. His high for carries was 5 in week 6. Gained 18 yards that week. Nothing. Not even in a showdown sense. It's really, really limited opportunities. He did get a red zone carry in each of week 6 and week 8 with a bye in between. I guess as like an extreme dart throw on a showdown slate, like it's not any worse than taking one of the, the third tight end on a depth chart. But it's going to be, bear in mind that it's going to be like 1 or 2 carries. And he has to actually convert a red zone carry for that to work. It's pretty limited. And then on the Bears side, Foreman carried the ball 20 times last week. He ran 12 routes but wasn't targeted. Saw 38 snaps. That led the running back room. Rashawn Johnson saw 18 snaps. That's down from 23 the week before, and Foreman was up from 19 the week before. Johnson carried the ball just twice. He ran 12 routes. He was targeted once. He caught it. Darrington Evans, just 6 snaps with the offense, carried the ball once, gained 2 yards, caught 2 of 2 targets for 19 yards. I would say I would go to Darrington Evans a little bit more frequently than Raheem Blackshear, but still he's kind of a limited option. Rashawn Johnson, probably fairly comparable to Miles Sanders, but in a little bit better of a situation just given the defense that he's going up against. And then Donta Foreman, kind of similar to Chuba Hubbard, but going up against just in a better matchup given the defense he's against. So I prefer the Bears rushing attack, but either way, you're going to a multi-headed backfield, which isn't ever great. And I do think this is going to be, despite a fairly low total, by the way, this is a 38-point total. Chicago just with the home field advantage favored by 3.5, favored by 3. Vegas doesn't love this game. I don't love overall the game environment, but I do think for what it's worth, they're going to be trying to throw the ball. I think the total's low not because of volume through the air, but just because these teams are bad at throwing the ball. But I do think the game will dictate that they need to try. So I kind of like going to the passing game a little bit more. Come on. You've obviously got a big option there in Adam Thielen at a big price. 11.8 in a flex roll. 17.7. The most expensive player on the slate. DJ Moore on the other side, 10.6, 15.9. I kind of, again, ignore the rankings. Not relevant to this slate. Paying that much less for DJ Moore has value in and of itself. Regardless of how they might project, those are relatively equivalent guys. And coming into the season, I could have sold you 2.5 Adam Thielens for your DJ Moore. Might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. Thielen last time out, just 29 yards on 5 catches. Was targeted 6 times. Kind of a limited game from him, but that was playing alongside a limited game from Bryce, in which he kept throwing the ball to the other team. But not great. The week before, 8 catches, 72 yards, targeted 11 times. 13 targets in each of the 2 games before that, with 11 catches and 100-plus yards and a touchdown in each of those games. Plenty left in the tank for Adam Thielen. He's going to be wildly popular on both sites, but the clear-cut number 1 in that offense, the clear-cut lead target, first read, most of the red zone looks. Plenty of opportunity. No DJ Shark, so remove the downfield threat there. You do have Mingo, and then you've got Terrace Marshall here. Mingo so far this season a 10.7 yard ADOT, where Terrace Marshall's just a 7.2. So I think if you're looking for somebody who's stepping into that DJ Shark role, it could be Mingo. I don't dislike this. He's been operating basically as the third man into that wide receiver set. 70 snaps with the offense last week. Just caught 1 pass. 4 targets on 46 routes run. The week before, 41 routes run. Targeted 5 times, caught 4 of them for 62 yards and a better performance. He's run between 40 and 46. Well, to put it fairly, it's 40, 41, 41, and then 46. So saying between 40 and 46 is kind of skewing it a little bit. But he's running 40-plus routes each of the last 4 weeks. 3, 4, 5, and 7 targets. Not going in any order chronologically there. I do think he's the next man up. So I like that option. I like that he's not getting all that much popularity. He's pretty cheap, easy to get to. Not the highest projection in the world, but should pick up a little bit of value. Again, against a just terrible pass defense, too. 256 plus yards and there it is, 2.2 touchdowns. I knew it was 2.2. Red zone targets, it's been Adam Thielen and just Adam Thielen, basically. 1 for Mingo, 2 for Terrace Marshall, a little bit to Hayden Hurst, a little bit to Tommy Tremble. After we talked about the tight ends from this team last week a little bit, Hayden Hurst went out, ran 20 routes, targeted 4 times, caught 2 of them, 54 yards, made 1 big play. Tommy Tremble ran 10 routes, was targeted twice, came up with them both 12 yards. Tremble scored the week before. Tremble's got 2 touchdowns on the season. Hayden Hurst has 1. It was 30 routes combined between the 2 of them. I mean, it's not a crazy, highly involved position for whatever that's worth in terms of what they're doing right now. So, I don't know. Make of that what you will. Jordan Matthews hasn't played yet this year. Don't know if he's going to be active. Emir Smith-Marset, that guy. 200, 300. Ran 3 routes in week 6. And also in each of weeks 3 and 4. Has yet to be targeted all year. So therefore he hasn't caught any passes. A maximum of 6 snaps with the offense all season. That came in week 6 at Miami. Then there was the bye. He's seen 10 snaps all on special teams each of the last 2 weeks. Is he returning punts or kicks or anything? I think he's returning kicks. Or punts, rather. Let's see. I cut that off on the notes that I'm looking at here. Yeah, 32 punt return yards last week. So, I mean, you're talking about a special teamer that you're looking to potentially break a punt return. Pair him with the defense and hope for the best if you're going that route. But that is a showdown exclusive, extreme dart throw that is not going to work most of the time. Let's see what's going on in the chat. I've been ignoring the chat, just realizing. Phil Stills here. Phil, what's going on, buddy? Hope all's well. I hope all's well with you too, pal. Everything is pretty well today. I don't know if we said that already. We talked to Tiz. Grant saved Tizzle's night. Daniel Pope we saw. Kevin O. There's Daniel's lineup. All right. Foreman at the captain. Moore, Bajent, Met, Miles Sanders, and the Bears. Leaves 900 on the table. Also like the 1-5 of captain, Sanders, Foreman, Moore, blah, 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 blah. Leaves 26 on the table. I always like leaving money on the table. I don't mind that at all. I don't love Sanders in that captain role, though. I don't like the idea of throwing 6 carries at a pretty decent rush defense. Trey likes Bajent a little bit. Has that Heineke in him, says Daniel Pope. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Defense bad on both teams. Kickers might have some appeal. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't mind Daniel a 5-1 or 1-5, however you want to put that. But the lineup with Sanders in the captain role, I don't really like him in that spot. So yeah, I would probably tend to go toward the other one, but I have no issues with a 5-1. With either one of these teams could get wiped out by the other one. Both of these teams are bad enough that could happen, and just a few bad plays, a few stupid plays, a couple interceptions that go the wrong way, could easily swing the game in somebody's favor fairly strongly. Might be a game to see who gets 2024 draft. Yeah, draft equity up for grabs for sure. So, Daniel, if you remind me in a sec when we jump over to the lineup builder, I'll actually pop that in and we'll take a look at it. Taking a look down at the Chicago side. Get back to this. So, again, DJ, the clear-cut number 1 here. But last week, 3 catches for 44. The week before, 4 catches, 55. 8 for 54, 5 for 51. That's each of the last 4 weeks. Running routes in the 30s. 8 targets, 9, 6, 5 targets. Diminishing targets each of the last 4 weeks playing with Bajent. it hasn't been pretty. He was having he had a great string of 3 weeks. Week 3, 41 yards and a touchdown. Week 4, 131 yards and a touchdown. And then the monster 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. But that was all with Fields. Darnell Mooney caught 5 passes last week, put up 82 yards, was targeted 6 times, ran 35 routes. Week before that, just caught 1 of 4 passes for 41. Mooney only scored 1 touchdown so far, came in week 1. Hasn't been above 82 yards was his high. Before that, he hadn't been above 53 yards that came in week 1. Mooney's also had 3 games this year in which he caught no passes, despite running that one. All right, in week 2, he just ran 12 routes, so we'll forgive that. But week 3, he ran 26 routes, was targeted once, didn't catch it. Week 5, he ran 32 routes, was targeted 4 times, didn't catch any of them. And that's their nominal second target. Their wide receiver, too, anyway. Cole Kmet is their second target. Tyler Scott, for 200, 300 on the DraftKings slate, took 38 snaps with the offense last week, has been at that exact level each of the last 4 weeks. Ran 18, then 17, then 24, then 20 routes. Targeted 4, 3, 3, and 2 times. Has come up with some catches, a few yards. Has also run the ball a couple of times. 3 carries in the past 4 weeks. Hasn't put anything on the board. Hasn't cracked 20 yards. But just the fact that he's touching the ball on a showdown slate for these prices makes Tyler Scott interesting. Not a great projection because it's only, again, you're talking about like 2-3 touches and probably 20 yards unless he actually makes something happen. But him actually making something happen is why we play the game, right? That's what shoots you up into that winning spot if you've got him. So that's a really strong price for a kid who's going to touch the ball a few times. And at the very least, he's out there for snaps and he's running routes. So that any given week, the game plan could change and that could increase a little bit in terms of how often he's targeted. Velus Jones, really nothing to see here. 7 routes run last week. 1 target, didn't catch it. 2 routes the week before, targeted both times. That's interesting enough, I guess, but caught one of them for 4 yards. Has 9 yards all season on 3 catches. Not really all that relevant. Equanimous would maybe be a little bit interesting at 200, 300 if he actually gets out there. He's played 2 games all year. He's seen, was out there for 41 snaps in week 4, ran 21 routes, targeted once, caught it for 21 yards. The next week in week 5, he played 24 snaps, targeted once on 13 routes. Other than that, he hasn't been out there all season. So don't really know what to expect, but would potentially be a little bit interesting. The lesser St. Brown brother. Cole Kmet, definitely your top option there. Again, tons of routes, tons of targets. Last time, 29. He basically runs routes like a wide receiver. Last time out, 6 catches for 55 and the 2 touchdowns that were hugely important at tight end that week. 10 catches for 79 yards the week before, caught all 10 targets. That's what I'm saying with, he's not necessarily a touchdown-dependent tight end, just given the volume that they're going to him. 10 targets 2 weeks ago, 8 targets last week. Had a 9-target week in week 4, 7 and 6 the first 2 weeks. Safety valves for tight ends are safety valves for young quarterbacks, as they always say. So there's plenty of safety in looking at Cole Kmet, and especially once they get in close, I really think they're going to be pulling the trigger and looking for the tight end spot. That is kind of though why I do want to get some Robert Tonyan in here. Again, it is a limited option, but he's run routes every week. His high was 12 in week 5, but he ran 9 routes last week. He's been targeted each of the last 2 weeks, once each. Caught them both. 8 yards 2 weeks ago, 11 yards last week. Neither of those was in the red zone. He did have a red zone target in week 6. He's out targeting and out snapping Mercedes Lewis. Well, the snaps are similar. He's getting more routes run. Mercedes is really out there mostly for blocking purposes at this point, it looks like. Tanyan's the guy who's out there running a few routes on his limited opportunities. 9 routes on 14 snaps, 6 routes on 13 snaps. Lewis is 1 out of 14, 2 out of 16, 2 out of 23. So if I'm looking for that down depth chart tight end option, I do think it's Tanyan on this side of the ball. Probably like Trumbull a little bit better, but I think he'll be the more popular. Right? But it's probably like if you had to rank those tight ends after Cole Kmet, it's probably Hurst, then Trumbull, then Tanyan. But I think he's playable. He's in my placeholder right now. So there's that. I do like those backup tight ends. I think that's everybody like individually going down the board. We do still have basketball to talk about. But let's jump over to the lineup builder and have a little fun real quick. Work that out. Oh, you know what? It didn't change is the... Let me get the correct totals for the contest sizes in here. I could have also just run Ace Mind Sims, but I didn't think of it in time. The FanDuel contest is... Whoops. 66,137. A little bit more manageable contest sizes on the FanDuel slate, but obviously it's instead of $500,000 to first, it's $100,000 tonight. DraftKings. DraftKings has 117,600 entries. Yep, same. All right. So let's take a look at Daniel Pope's lineup. Ricky Lee, can we talk about Dame questionable yet? We'll get there. I'm just hoping that the news comes out before we get to that point. That's why I put NBA second. Opportunity to pick up some news. All right, so Daniel wants to see... Is that the same one? That's the same lineup, right? Foreman, Moore, Bagent, Kmet, Sanders, and the Bears. So let's start with that. Foreman, Moore, Bagent, Kmet, the Bears, and Miles Sanders. That is going to be duped a whole hell of a lot of the time. A little more than I thought. Oh, wait. Let's get... hold on. Let's get that fixed. Let's just... Wait. What do I have it as? Why is that not... I don't know why that's not coming up. Oh, because it's the FanDuel side. I'm an idiot. That's why. A lot to remember with these different sheets, especially when there's so many of them. All right, there they are. So that'll be due 53 times, not 200 plus times. That's still a lot of ways to chop. But again, if you're chopping $500,000 plus the second, third through 53rd place prizes, 53 ways, it's not the worst situation in the world. But this is not the most unique lineup you could possibly make. But let's see what we can do to, like, if you went with like cheapo Tyler Scott and left some bunch of money on the table, that immediately gets you down. And Tyler Scott is not necessarily going to touch the ball all that much less frequently than Miles Sanders is. By the same token, you could just go to the other side. No, you can't because you've got too many Bears already. Let's get Cole Kmet out of there. I love the Cole Kmet spot, obviously. But let's go a different route. Let's put some Mingo into that. That gets us down to 6. And that's pretty realistic. And yeah, I realize that you can't do the Scott play with the way it was. But with Mingo in there now, you can. You've got 9,700, so you can obviously make any changes that you want to this. So let's get Tyler Scott out of there. And let's give Mingo his kicker. It's 22. We give the Bears their kicker. 29. What if instead of Mingo? I mean, if you just did this in your original lineup. I told you Robert Tonyan makes a difference. But again, that is a pretty big dart throw there. But there's not a lot of ownership on Mr. Tonyan. So it's kind of a cheat to just lower that dupe kind of artificially there. But it can be done. Let's go a different route. So maybe some ideas there. But that original one is a good lineup. It's just going to be duped a decent amount of the time. But maybe you may consider some of those changes. Trey says, finally signed up for Ace Mine. Awesome. I recommend them. I like them a lot. Trey says, only thing I don't like is I can't sim all contest sizes with the regular subscription and not pro only. Ah, okay. I'm not aware of what the different packages look like. That's something to talk to our pals over there and mention to them. And maybe there are different tiers that they'll end up creating based on feedback. I think early on it's important to give feedback about stuff like that too. So let them know, Trey. What you think about the availability of what the sims are and the bang for the buck. I have the one where you can just kind of like do whatever. I don't know what the different tiers are called. I have run into obstacles, and I've been putting a pretty high end requirement on it. So let's just look at a Thielen in the captain role lineup real quick, because again, despite the crazy high price, he was coming up. It looked like at least a fair amount of the time. You would want Bryce with him most of the time. I think it would be important to probably take Bajent as well. Now we're already down to 4,400. Fortunately, there's a ton of really cheap guys to go to. So you go like Mingo and just get your claw a lot of money back already. You could probably still throw the Bears at that. And then like 59. This will be popular. Yeah, 45 times duped. If you went to like a Rashawn Johnson, that cuts it down a little bit. Tyrus Marshall, who will be involved. It's not bad, but see, if I was going to do this, I would rather have it, I think, this way. Because Bryce Young is going to be lower owned in that captain spot. Right, so that's a pretty significant change. And it basically, for all intents and purposes, halves the number of times this is going to be duped by just switching these two. And it actually gains you salary. So if you were jammed up for salary, Terrace Marshall's in here. He only costs 400, so you wouldn't be jammed up for salary with that. But now we've got a ton of money to spend, so we could go a different direction, and if you could even make it, you could chalk this thing up a little bit. So what do I have? 6,900 total. You could Coke Men in there if you wanted them. That brings you back to 40 dupes. Probably improves your chances of winning pretty dramatically. Let's say you wanted to go like Pinheiro. I don't know, like Pinheiro. Yeah, Pinheiro to go along with the. I don't like having the Bears defense in there against this now, though. I don't mind it. Like there's honestly not that much reason that couldn't succeed. But probably not with also the kicker in there is the thing that suddenly I object to. Like, let's say you went that way with it instead. Let's take the Bears D out. You can go both kickers if you want. 65, plenty of money for that. But the point of illustrating that was, you save money and you get reduced potential for duplication by going to the quarterback over the skill player this time out when it's Adam Thielen. When it's the other guys on that team, it's a little bit more of a direct exchange. Like Mingo's so low owned in the captain spot that it won't matter. Just fill it out with like anything. And Juba. That wasn't to really build a lineup. I don't think I would play this lineup. But it was just to look at... so that's a 40. If you went this way with Mingo, it goes up because Bryce Young is more highly owned. Right, so it's just with Adam Thielen that applies. But Thielen, I do think, is the most likely player to put up a pretty significant score on this slate. But that doesn't necessarily mean you want him in your captain spot. DJ Moore, captain. Maybe we'll round this out with this. I think you would want Bajent with that. I don't really want to go to the running backs. I'm just going to go back to the Bryce Young, and we'll just go to the obvious with Mingo. And then that gives us 61. Actually, the Bears D. I don't want to go Bears D and Santos, but you could. It's not awful. Do something like this. There you go, Bryce already. That's not uninteresting. Obviously, it becomes kind of dependent on Tommy Tremble doing anything, but it's duped a few times. But that's kind of interesting. DJ captain with his quarterback, Young with his number 2 wide receiver / deep threat this week, and his second tight end, but basically the guy, splitting the job fairly evenly. And then the lead running back on the other side going up in the better spot for a running back matchup. I don't hate that. You could probably do better, but I don't hate that for DraftKings. FanDuel. It's FanDuel. It's kind of Young is going to be popular. Bajent's going to be popular. Thielen's going to be popular. DJ will be popular. It's kind of just straight down the line than Golk Met. So I like the idea of going to some of the also-ran guys, like the Mingos of the world in FanDuel, even though there's no salary multiplier, as we've talked about a million times. I do think there's value in doing that, but you can also just go to these guys and just kind of differentiate by pairing up different guys on this week's slate, just because there is a fair amount of variance through this, and there's a fair amount of lineup spread, of popularity spread. But like Mingo and Young and Bajent and let's say Mooney, and now you got 12 grand still, and you could just put Donta Foreman in that, and that's not going to be duped all that many times. There you go. That's an easy win. Kind of like that. Not going to lie. I would play that lineup. All right, FanDuel's done. It's just so straightforward. It's just not the interesting problem that it is across on the DraftKings slate. Clear that out. Let's see if you wanted to go to Thielen again. Obviously, Thielen the lead opportunity to multiply some points up. Oops. Go like multi-back out of the Chicago backfield. Oof. I don't know that would actually be duped as many times as that suggests. Both running backs, the defense. It's kind of on theme. I don't love, again, the defense going up against the captain quarterback combination, but if it's a low scoring game, which would be what you'd be shooting for, chew some clock with both running backs, the defense being in play despite, the one big play, the two big plays that Bryce Young, Adam Thielen got together for. I can see that succeeding, but if you have to tell that narrative with 39 dupes, there's probably better lineups. What about a Foreman in the captain spot, though? I kind of like that idea now of the top two running backs from the Bears side with a little bit of opportunity. Chill, buddy. I know. And we've got all the money in the world to spend again. I mean, you go real. You go real anti-Carolina and do something like that. And then whoever. Chuba into that. That's still duped a decent amount of time. Again, I don't know necessarily, there's maths out that way, but I don't necessarily know in reality that people play this lineup as many times as that suggests. Even if we wanted to take, like, Thielen against it. Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. Stephen Leibowitz says two running backs from the same team is threading the needle big time. Absolutely. But on a showdown slate especially, it doesn't have to go off big. Just put them both in the end zone and have the lead back do the lead back thing, 70-plus yards, and his touchdown. Johnson just goes for 12 yards on 3 carries, but one of them's into the end zone. And you're probably all right if that stays on theme and also goes low scoring. Carolina doesn't do anything, right? So, I mean, you're telling a specific story with that lineup. But I do think that with the multi-headed backfields and the bad teams in play, that two running backs from the same team is definitely playable on a showdown slate. And it's playable on most showdown slates. There's, opportunities that are better than others. But I think with two bad teams, it's probably doable. And I would probably take the shot on the Bears side, just given, again, that the Bears defense has been shutting the run down fairly effectively. And yes, as you said, that's the most important thing to remember. Showdown means getting weird. So I think that's that. That was about an hour on the football slate, which is a little longer than I was thinking, but about a half hour probably coming on basketball. We'll get ourselves switched over to that. Let me take a beat here. Make sure that we're up to speed on this. I'll close that. I'll pull this up to basketball. All right. Just hang out one sec, gang. We're transitioning from show to show. Didn't want to have to split it up between, make you guys click out of this, click over to a totally new YouTube channel. It would just be dumb to do it that way. It'd be dumb for me to do it that way, even if it gets 5 more clicks. With that in mind, hit the like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button so that you know when these random crazy schedule shows go live. All right. Let us get into basketball. Everything is as of about a half hour before the football show started. Doesn't look like we've had any breaking news in the last little bit. I realize I'm still sharing that football screen. Whoops. Nobody wanted that. All right, let's get this thing sized up. It doesn't look all bad. When it's like this size, it's all right, right? It's like, it's somewhat legible. No Dame news. Yeah, that's the key thing, Steven. That's what I was, like I said, I wanted to talk about NBA second. I was hoping we would get that. But so far, no news on Mr. Lillard, which would have been beneficial. But we'll get by. Condensed slate, 2 games. Not a ton of daylight between a lot of these guys in the sim results. Everybody comes up in major double digits because there's just no other places to go. So in some ways, basically everybody's relevant, and just throw a bunch of darts at it, cover a spread, cast a wide net, 2-game slate, kind of like Showdown, get a little different, get a little bit weird. Not crazy weird. Not AJ Griffin weird necessarily. But there's plenty of opportunity to mix and match some things together. You want to stick with, again, don't get me wrong, you want to stick with the optimal construction pass for the most part. But there is a degree of differentiation that needs to get involved with a 2-game slate. In Vegas, let me close this NFL one so I stop opening it accidentally every time I try and switch files. In Vegas, top of the show, these were a 243-point total between the Bucks and the Pacers. Pacers are 3-point dogs at home. And then a 231-point total between Atlanta and Orlando. Orlando 3.5-point dogs. 3.5-point dogs at home. So pretty good game environments, like scoring-wise. 240 plus is awesome. That's a great game environment. And then 231, definitely nothing to sneeze at there. So, and 2 teams that have been providing some relevant players between Orlando and Atlanta in that second game. So it's definitely some interesting options. A lot of guys that project fairly well. Let's go by DraftKings win rates at the top of the board here. TJ McConnell didn't show up in sims on either site. Not projected for much. Didn't get any results out of TJ. Even AJ Griffin apparently got into 0.01% of top 1. So you're saying there's a chance. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you're not really looking to embrace these kind of differentiation options, but maybe some of the Malik Beasleys and so on of the worlds are a little bit more relevant. So no TJ off the top there. Bogdan in a 26-minute appearance looks hyper relevant on the DraftKings slate, where he only costs 4,400, shooting guard and small forward eligible. Markelle Fultz, assuming he plays. So those are your pieces of news. Giannis is probable. Dame is questionable. And Markelle Fultz is questionable. Fultz has been out. Questionable to return. Seems like the fact that he landed questionable instead of just doubtful/out is encouraging. But with NBA, you never know. Sometimes they do say it and then pull it back through the day. So that's another one to keep an eye on. Got him in right now. He looks very relevant if he plays. 5,100 on DraftKings has him in half the winning lineups. 5.34 DraftKings points per dollar so far this season. 0.87 DraftKings points per minute. 0.90 FanDuel points per minute. In the 4 games he played, he was playing 28 minutes a night. Giving him 29. I think that's relatively fair. Maybe it pulls back by, you could see that drop to 26, 27 in a realistic sense. First game back. But I wanted to give him a full run. Giannis, the big star on the slate. Apologies to Dame. 1.40 FanDuel points per minute now. Played just 21.9 minutes before getting tossed. 41.3 FanDuel points. Was having a pretty good one. We talked going into yesterday about and the game before about the diminished output from Giannis so far. That's kind of gone away over the last 2 or game and a half that we've seen from him. So hopefully that's an encouraging sign that we return to the the 1.6 and change ridiculous Giannis performances that keep him in that elite top 3-4 guys of the league. Dame, if he goes, obviously going to be really, really relevant. Down the board, like Jalen Smith, Sadiq Bey come up a little relevant just on price. Looks fairly Starsy Scrubsy. I mean, it's only 2 games, so it's going to be that way anyway. But like Tyrese hits this pretty hard. Dame hits it pretty hard. Giannis hits it pretty hard. Not a bad middle. Bay's been a .86 FanDuel point per minute player. Jalen's been at 1.35. That's just ridiculous. Only 19 minutes projected. Only playing 17.7 minutes a night. Played 25 the last time out. Put up 38.7 FanDuel points. Pretty massive spot there. Bear with me. Boncaro at 8,000, 7,900. Power forward, small forward on the FanDuel slate, landing in 50% of the top lineups over there. A little bit less on DraftKings, 30% of the time. 30% puts you on the same tier as a lot of guys here, right? The average through that just random swath of people that I just selected is 29.7% in winning lineups. So it just kind of goes to show how just broad the slate is when there's only 2 games. On FanDuel, Banchero's a lot more valuable. There's a broader spread for him to these other guys on the FanDuel slate. Oops. Just trying to pull this up and double check something across town real quick. So, Beantown says, Giannis is the Klay Thompson of spend-ups. I keep pretending like he'll pay off, keep wallowing in disappointment. At least the price has come down a little bit. You're not paying $12,000 for him when he's only putting up 1.3, 1.4. But yeah, hopefully we just get him back to, like I was saying, the 1.6 and change level. Ricky Lee, Goga is projected there because Goga is currently 1.41 fantasy points per minute player so far this year, giving him 25 minutes in that rotation tonight. Last time out, played 21.4 or 21.9, excuse me. My eyes jumped to the wrong line. Only put up 22 FanDuel points, but has significant point per minute upside. So that's why I was double checking. They have them similar levels at other places. Is there somewhere that you have in mind that's significantly lower on them? Mike Palm, what's going on, Mike? Mike says hello. You're late. There's no such thing as late, man. These things exist as long as you get it in before lock. After lock would be a late time to watch this show. Not a lot of shelf life on these things. What is this crosstown you speak of? Just when I look at different sites, I refer to it as a crosstown. Just good to have different places you can cross-check things. And I was just double-checking that other places had similar thoughts on Goga's opportunity tonight. But I think even if he goes, call it 22 minutes for 5,000 on a 2-game slate, significant point per minute performer. Specifically, Phil, I was checking against Roto Grinders projection there. I don't have a Stochastic subscription anymore, otherwise I'd check them. I do think Stochastic is the better of the two. But yeah, for just for reference sake, last year, gonna take a sec. Hey, it loaded. How about that? 1.11 DraftKings points, 1.17 FanDuel points per minute in 320 minutes from the beginning of last year. So again, not the monstrous 1.4 necessarily that he's put up so far, but he's not a superstar. But he's been a 1+ fantasy point per minute player for as long as I can remember. So as long as we're getting 22, 25 minutes, I think it's perfectly fine. Was there a reason Wagner ran more minutes last time? They've just been depleted. Wendell's out. Markel's been out. Oh, Mo? Probably same answer, right? Just kind of a lack of bodies. You jump over to popcorn machine and look at the rotation again. I looked at this at like 7:30 this morning in a haze. Yeah, I mean, they ran a 9-man with Caleb Houston picking up 13.5 minutes the last time out. Mo played the entire fourth, as did Cole Anthony. They lost that game by 15 points to Dallas. So I think just picking up the garbage time minutes late probably put it over the top. He ended up with 26 minutes. But they've just been so limited short bench. So everybody gets a little bit of bonus run there. Goga's 21.9 that we were talking about. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. He had just two fouls. Didn't pick him up till the third quarter. So you got a few minutes plus in the fourth quarter tonight. Goga good. You get the same kind of minutes not restriction, but the same kind of minutes output. Goga okay. You get less than that or a clunky game, Goga bad. And same thing with the other guys, but I would expect a little bit of minutes there from Mo. What do I have, Matt? I'm at 22. I could see that going up again. I could see it cresting, 24, 26. Jump back to the chat. Foreman, Shaheed, Sutton. Choose 2 of 3. Donta Foreman, Rashid Shaheed, and Cortland Sutton. Is that what we were talking about, Matthew? Going back to football, you can't scramble my brains like that and ask about players who aren't playing today in a different sport than we're talking about. I'd probably just go with Rashid Shaheed and Cortland Sutton. I haven't looked at the full Sunday slate, but I just don't love that multi-headed backfield situation for. I assume that's season long. I don't love that. T. Higgins expected to miss week 10. It'll be interesting if Jamar Chase also sits. He's been not practicing all week. So yeah, I think I would go with the 2 receivers. But again, haven't really specifically looked at it. I do like Rashid Shaheed. I like both those receivers though. Let's look at. All right, so what happens with Milwaukee if Dame doesn't go? Campaign, I assume, picks up a pretty significant minutes bump. And then What's the other? Ty? I guess Ty would grab some minutes. I would only probably hand him a few and then maybe distribute a couple others around the board. Beauchamp would probably pick up some. Yeah, like roster-wise, Ty's the other point guard. But at 4,000 on FanDuel campaign, just given a 14-point projection in 14 minutes, was coming up 6-ish% of the time. For 3,700 on DK, 2 and change percent of the time, he would take a jump. A lot of other relevant parts on this Milwaukee team, though, of course. 240-point total in that game. No surprise. But Giannis, super relevant across both sites. Dame, very, very relevant if he plays across both sites. Pat Connaughton with just 22 minutes projected for 3,900 on FanDuel lands in top lineups in the 20s. 39 on the DK slate, same thing. 30+% of the time in top ones, 26% of the time in tops. Brolo, interesting enough, 15% of the time on FanDuel. A little bit less so on DK at the 5,800. What are our center options? Why is this thing funky? Mouse is giving me problems. You can see it. Look at that. I don't know why. Stupid technology. Simple wireless mouse should not give me as many issues as this thing does. What was I going to look up? Centers. I was going to look it up on FanDuel. A little bit more relevant. FanDuel. Center only position. Only Bobby Portis. Is that right? Only Portis out of all these guys is power forward and center. All right, so center's kind of interesting on FanDuel today then. Portis is the second most or third most frequently optimal guy in this group, but I would suspect that most of that comes at the power forward spot. How much do we have there? Yeah, so this adds up to 97% among the center only guys. So Portis' shares come almost exclusively at the power forward position. And then you get these other guys at the center only. So that's an opportunity to maybe create some differentiation. If you wanted to just construct your lineup differently, it doesn't necessarily pay out correctly. But like, let's look at who are the power forward only guys, or who are the power forward eligible guys. So like most specifically, if you had Giannis as well, which I expect you do. So you go 1. It's not like you don't have significant winners at power forward. These guys also have small forward eligibility for all of them. There's probably a good opportunity to create differentiation by going Portis center, pay up. Not like there's too crazy pay ups, but like Banchero, Giannis. Just because those pairings will be a little bit more limited out of optimizers. That's kind of interesting. I don't mind that. So while most of those shares for Portis seem like they fell at the power forward spot only, again, that was to illustrate that maybe there's some opportunity to differentiate there. Miles Turner, probably the highest ceiling overall. Goga, obviously showing some relevance. We talked about him a little bit already. 1.41 fantasy points per minute so far. Turner, a more realistic 1.34. Not that Goga's unrealistic. Again, last year, for the full year from the beginning of last year to this year, it's been 1.14. But Turner's number is more like what Miles Turner does. Clint Capella, not unreasonable. 25-minute projection. Lands in top lineups 18% of the time on FanDuel, 18% of the time on DraftKings for 5,700. Mo looks a lot more relevant on DraftKings at 48 than he does at 54 at center only on FanDuel. Again, potentially another source of differentiation, I guess, but he'll definitely not be the most popular selection there, but not really an optimal play. It's probably more just in terms of you're sacrificing one of these guys to get there. Okongwu, by the same token, you're just sacrificing better plays to get to a more limited one. Jalen is a little bit less that, but also probably falls into that bucket a little bit. Center on FanDuel, probably the most interesting spot on the board. Yeah, Beantown, that's one of the guys I had in mind when I said that I would probably take a lot of those minutes and just kind of spread them. Like I had Beauchamp at just, 15 minutes or whatever. Middleton's just at 20-ish or wherever I have him. Where is he? 22. So yeah, kick him up to 26, handful more minutes. Absolutely, I think that there's realistic opportunity for just like, all right, whoever, you're in our top 8, you're going to get minutes. It's not necessarily going to go downboard to have Ty play the point a ton. They could just go point Giannis if they need to. But Campaign would be the big beneficiary there for sure. Just looking at this again, Bogdan not an irrelevant piece of this slate at all. 4,400 on DraftKings, shooting guard, small forward, just projected for 26 minutes of Bogdan kind of things. Last time out, 29.9 FanDuel points in 26.6 minutes, 1.06 FanDuel points per minute on the season. That's just who he is, and that's really all you need from him tonight. Ceiling would obviously be nice, but he's very, very relevant. Fultz, got to get him out there. Creates a question mark, but we've just seen that version of that team the last few days with him out. Tyrese, definitely very interesting. Tyrese Halliburton, 38% of the time in top lineups on DraftKings. Similar numbers on FanDuel. Definitely one of the players with a realistic 60-plus point ceiling. 1.48 FanDuel points per minute so far. 1.53 DraftKings points per minute so far. Dominant player, 10,000. Anytime, especially on a 2-gamer where you can go to the kid who's going to have the ball in his hands the most and just be able to call his own number if he wants to or do whatever he wants out there, there's opportunity in that. And Halliburton is obviously a go-to here. Ben Mathurin shows a little bit of value for 48 at shooting guard, small forward. So that's, again, I like with him being that valuable, again, at small forward potentially on the FanDuel slate, it just ticks back to that, all right, those other guys, when we were looking at the Portis thing, were power forward and small forward. So just thinking of it in terms of like, where do we lose value when you have sustained value through those different positions? If you just move everybody back one spot from where they might have otherwise gone, that stays interesting. It's like you go to Mathurin at the small forward, and then you've got, all right, well, actually, maybe that is the spot. You go DeJounte Murray at shooting guard. We're also probably getting expensive. Jalen. And then you go back up to the top with some of those point guards. Fultz would probably be pretty critical in that. You need him at 57 to make that work. Although if Middleton goes and picks up a few more minutes at shooting guard, that could potentially be a differentiator there. Buddy could potentially be a $5,200 differentiator. At 6,066 on the DraftKings slate, Buddy Hield is a lot less relevant. 6,600 lands in top lineups just 5.4% of the time on DraftKings. 43.4% of the time on FanDuel because he only costs 5,200. 1.02 FanDuel points per minute so far 1.03 FanDuel points per minute so far on the season. Matthew Patterson says Middleton is the same human as Glenn Big Dog Robinson. Solid shooter that does absolutely nothing else well. The Bucks need to move on from him. Yeah, I mean, he's a solid, better than a role player kind of a guy. But certainly not your number 2 on a title team. Number 3 on a title team, realistic, obviously. So far this season, 56.5% true shooting. 23.9% assist rate. We're talking about a limited sample. 10.5% rebounding rate. shooting 31%, taking 3 threes a game. That's just, again, small sample this year over a couple of games. 5 games, 18.5 minutes a night. Not true Chris Middleton sample yet. But yeah, you want him as your third banana. So on this team, that's not bad as long as you've got full go with Giannis and Dame. Could you move him for something that's better than him, or like 2 role players that add up to more than him? Probably. I don't know about an individual that's better than him in terms of a trade, but maybe you could move him for like 2 less than pieces that add up to more than the whole. Payne becomes relevant again if Dame sits. Beasley probably picks up a little bit there, but he's already at 24 minutes, 11% of the time in top 1, 17% in winners. That's kind of interesting, the discrepancy there. 4,700 on DraftKings doesn't have him really relevant at all. 0.74 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. Never a comfy fit. But a guy that, guys that are not comfy fits on a 2-game slate could potentially be all right. Nemhard, not a ton to love, but low single digits relevance anyway. Jumping into the forward spot, a lot of the same guys we've looked at already. Giannis, just extreme value across both sites at all positions, it seems like. I feel like Giannis has just stayed on the board the entire time. Bogdan also feel like has been on the board this entire time. Shooting guard and small forward on both sides keeps him relevant. Jalen Smith, we touched on when we were talking about FanDuel centers, but looking at him on DraftKings, power forward and center, 4,100 makes him very, very relevant over there. 41% of top ones, 38% of winners. Just a value square. Easy to put into any one of the big men spots or the util spot. And just one of your more realistic low salary guys. Not a ton of minutes available. On a bigger slate, he'd be a lot less relevant. But just a cheap square, while DraftKings has this pricing very, very tight. Sadiq Bey, I talked about a little bit at the top. Less interesting on FanDuel, low to mid single digits for 52, but for 43 on DraftKings becomes very, very relevant. 0.87 DraftKings points per minute so far this season, 26-minute projection. Not a bad option by any means. Last time out, 25.6 FanDuel points in 26 minutes. Gives you basically just, Sadiq Bey. That's what he's been doing for the last few years. Gets the occasional game where he cracks through a little bit better of a performance than this. Goes north of 1 fantasy point per minute. Typically, you're in about this range. But on a slate like this, that's got value when you can get it for 4,300 at the forward spots on DraftKings. Banchero, more relevant on FanDuel. 55% of the time in winners. Very, very key play over there. A little bit less so on DraftKings, but a key play still nonetheless. 30% plus of the time. You've just got a wide swath of guys through here again that are very, very relevant. He's the most expensive out of that group. So when you can get these guys that are landing in lineups equal to him for less, there's obvious value there. But at a certain point, with only 2 games and only a certain amount of high-priced talent to choose from, you just have salary. So either you're sacrificing a lot of salary, which isn't a mistake on a slate like this, or you're just going to and just paying for a Banchero, which would lead to him being highly owned. But even at price, a relevant part of the slate. Paul Millsap says, great content channel, sir. It seems like you take your time to be diligent, sharing relevant statistic and data needed to make a wise decision when it comes to fulfilling a player prop. I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you. Just to, if you missed it, please cover the column headers before the full meanings of the column headers. Sure. No worries at all. These ones I think are straightforward, right? Players, your teams, your games, your matchups, this is the minutes. That one I guess could be a little bit wider. That's the projected minutes. Blue side is FanDuel. Green side is DraftKings. And you're just looking at your salaries, your positions, obviously. This is your FanDuel projection. That's your DraftKings projection. This is your points per dollar. Just a simple, points per dollar from their salary. And then these columns are your appearances, frequency of appearance in top 1% of lineups in a sim that I ran over on AceMind before the slate. So we're simming against the full contest. This was with no lineups prepared. It was just a raw sim of the entire contest. So that's how frequently they land in top ones. This is how frequently they land in the winning lineup. Same thing over here for DraftKings results. Then this is just recent performance. This is total season games played, season minutes per game, just to gauge where we're at on minutes. Then this is the most recent game. Minutes played last game, fantasy points last game. This is season-long points per minute for FanDuel. Season-long points per minute for DraftKings is over here. This is the player usage rate for this season. And then what used to be in the middle that I've now moved over here that we only occasionally touch on are stats like true shooting percentage, assist rate, rebounding rate, and then just general points per game, rebounds a game, assists, three-pointers taken, made, three-point percentage. And then some older stuff over here this is points per minute from, is it 21, 22? I could update that and have it be the ones that I constantly have to look up. Forgot those were over there. So that's just what we're looking at here, Paul. Good question, though. Always important to know what you're looking at on something like this. Nothing worse than like watching something like one of these where it's just going through and just, hearing numbers shouted at you and having no idea what any of it's referring to. So please, anytime I'm doing something like that, slow me down. Let me know, guys. The other thing that always used to drive me nuts watching these shows would be when we're off on a tangent and the person who's talking just keeps saying he when referring to the player. I always try and circle back and hit the name again, because a lot of the time, like, I'll stop if I'm listening to a show and, I'm on the bus listening to a podcast, or I'm just watching a show here and I'm doing whatever. You just stop paying attention for half a second. And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, who are you talking about? It sounds like a great play. Tell me who you're talking about. Come on, say the name. And you have to like rewind to find out who they were talking about. It drives me nuts. So I always try and repeat the name. But if I'm ever wandering in the weeds like that, let me know. And if you ever want to know anything about what's on the board here, definitely let me know. Good question. Other somewhat relevant plays, Bruce Brown, maybe a little relevant, 31 minutes. Not a great per minute performer, 0.71 for the season, just a 14% usage rate. Comes up in top lineups a fair amount of the time, though. FanDuel, definitely looking a little bit relevant over there because he only costs $5,000 at the small forward spot. DraftKings, fortunately for you, a little bit less relevant, but still in the double-digit returns. Point guard and small forward for 61. Just a lot of clunkers from Bruce Brown. Like that one. 20 fantasy points in 32 minutes. Not great. 2-game slate, though. Got to embrace some of these options. Buddy we touched on. Bobby Portis we talked about at length. Chris Middleton we touched on. Middleton also just, sub 4 points per dollar. 4 on the nose on DraftKings. Potential to pick up minutes. Would probably need some additional minutes here to really deliver a lot of relevance. Jay Crowder, another guy, potentially with minutes just being spread around, could certainly play more than the 24 that he's projected for, but another guy who's not a really high-end per-minute performer. Just 22 fantasy points in 37 minutes the other night. That's hard to do. What's harder to do is the 6 points that Christian Wood put up in like 22 minutes or whatever last night. 6? Are you kidding me? 3 rebounds? It's difficult to play 21 minutes of basketball and be that big and only grab 3 rebounds the entire time. Only put up 6 fantasy points. That's impressive. Jerk. Rui had the game that we needed from Chris Wood. Anybody else on this list? Doesn't really, a lot of mix and match parts. Like Aaron Nesmith could certainly be a mix in. 20% of the time he's in winners on FanDuel for 4,900, 5,000. Less relevant on DraftKings, but on the board. A lot of single-digit guys that are, annoyingly hit the board. It would be better if these guys were zipped down to 1, 2%, and you just were choosing between these guys. But these guys are hitting the board a little bit on DraftKings. Your Bruce Browns, your Nesmiths, your Middletons and Portises and Hields and Crowders of the world. Your Joe Ingles's. 3,500 for Joey Ingles, a 15-minute projection, an 11.9 points projection. Still lands in top lineups 5% of the time because he's so cheap and because that DraftKings pricing is so tight. Jonathan Isaac, Anthony Black, the bottom of the board here. Not really relevant on either site. Not a ton of love for those two plays. 4,346, 3,643. It's interesting that for that $100 difference, Joey Ingles creeps into 5% of lineups, where Jonathan Isaac, power forward center versus small forward, power forward, not cracking lineups at all. Just shows how just exclusively salary based that is. Tiz knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's me when I have any show on in the car when I'm driving. Say the name. Yep. Nothing worse than that. Who are you talking about? So I think that wraps up the forwards here. Jump over to centers real quick. I realize it's after 5 already. I know other important shows are starting up. Not that those guys are going to have just, nonstop relevant information from 5 to 7 for this crappy 2-gamer. But I know people do like to jump over to the shows that they know and love. So I trying to slot these into the earlier part of the afternoon. Not early afternoon, but a little earlier. Give those guys their established space. And just kind of hang out over here and do our thing. Giannis, still on the board. How is Giannis available at every position today? I really don't understand. He's been on the board the entire show. Giannis is the most relevant player on the entire slate. Jalen Smith, we touched on 40% of the time in top lineups on DraftKings. Way more relevant, 4 times more relevant over on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. Little bit of value on FanDuel. But again, if you're looking at center here, you've got your center only guys that all look the same. And I think you're just mixing matching your way through those guys. DraftKings is a little bit more flexible in what you can do because you've got all the multiple power forward and center guys, and you can also take multiple bites at the center position itself by virtue of having the util spot. So you get many more opportunities here to spread out through those guys. So like Obi Toppin, more relevant on DraftKings. 4,000 power forward center, projected for 24 minutes, 20 fantasy points, a 0.8 FanDuel point per minute performer so far, 0.77 on the DraftKings scale, 18 fantasy points in 19 minutes. I don't really miss him. A lot of Knicks fans seem to miss Obi and lament that the Obi thing didn't work out. I'm fine with him not being here. He never really did all that much interesting. He's also was drafted at weirdly old. He was, I think, a 4-year senior. So he's just a little older than your average guy. I think he's older than RJ Barrett, who was drafted 2 years after. Right? Or were they drafted the same year? I forget. Too much going on in the old noggin. Mo, we talked about. Capella. We basically did centers when we looked at the FanDuel centers before. Goga's a little bit of a wild card, for sure. That 5,400 plays well on both sides. 5,000 on FanDuel plays a little bit better. But if you cut Goga down to 22 minutes and you don't give him the ball near the rim, you can easily burn that play pretty quickly. So, tournament play for sure. I think you're a lunatic if you're playing cash on a 2-game slate. Yeah, not really. Okongwu, oddly drawing a little bit of value. Not at all on FanDuel, but again, DraftKings, just by virtue of being 4,200, projected at 22 minutes, playing 22 minutes a night over 7 games, 25 minutes the last time out, put up 21.8 FanDuel points. So 1.05 per minute player. So if he plays 22, he's going to give you between 22 and 25 points. On DraftKings at 4,200, that's kind of relevant. You don't have to sacrifice one of the better centers. You don't have to sacrifice Giannis or somebody like that. Even downboard, you could play him alongside Miles Turner, Brolo. I don't know that I roll him and Clint Capella out there, although that's a potentially interesting way to differentiate on a stupid 2-game slate. I don't know that I would lock it off. Capella and Okongwu together. It's not ideal, just given, you're talking about the 2 guys from the same team there, but given how they land in the top lineups, I'm sure some of those include both of them in lineups together. So it's just about the salary. It's just about the salary and a handful of minutes, and the per minutes. It's about this rate at this salary with that many minutes. It does not matter what this name is. Ryan S., only 4 thumbs up. Take 2 seconds to click that little thumbs up. Yeah, click that little thumbs up out there, people. We'll get it. We'll get more than 4, hopefully. I rarely go back and check, but I do always like to see when I go back. I do sometimes see it because I open up the previous one to copy paste the show description for the next one when I schedule it, so that's usually when I see it. I'm so bad at like actually promoting or paying attention to any of the analytics or anything like that. I'm just here for you guys. It's fun that way. If I take it too seriously, it becomes like a whole thing, right? We'll just let it grow organically. Let it do its own thing. Tiz shows 22. Yeah, I think it shows sometimes it gets just frozen up and you have to reload. 22 sounds a little bit better. It makes me feel better. I think that's about it, guys. I really don't think there's too much to talk about. I do have... let's pull these up. That's what we can do. Our new ending to the show. We look at what some of these lineups actually look like. If you haven't seen this before, this is Ace Mind, where the Sims run. And these are the lineups that we were looking at the results from. Player data. All this player data is what we were looking at in that spreadsheet. So just to look at the actual nature of some of these top lineups. A lot of the guys we talked about, obviously. Plenty of room for stars. This one's got Tyrese and Giannis in it. This is this tab, by the way, is the top 150. This ran a sim for 27,000 entries for the full pool on DraftKings. So if you clicked over here, you could get a full sample of 27,000 or all the unique ones. So maybe it's 25, 21, whatever. But you get 20,000 lineups here. Or you can just download your top 150 right here. But so, yeah, again, this has plenty of room for stars with Tyrese, with Giannis. Even Miles Turner creeps into that one. Markelle Fultz, who was showing a ton of value. Bay, who we talked about being oddly valuable. Bogdan, who we talked about throughout the entire show being a very valuable component just in a points per dollar sense, and how frequently he was coming up at the top of the lineups. Dame looks like a very relevant piece if he plays. That's going to be critical news. And it's Dame and Giannis in a lot of these. Goga hits the board a fair amount of the time. Over here. A little bit less, actually, than I would have necessarily thought at the top. Probably a little bit more throughout down here. Turner's in here a bunch. There's more Turner than I expected to see. Going through a lot of these top lineups on DK. Do we have a Capella? Now I want to see if we ended up with a Capella and a Okongwu. Don't see it at the very top here. Oops. Maybe not. Oh, there it is. Where's a Capella and Okongwu? Dame, Buddy, Connaughton, Giannis, Okongwu, Fultz, Bay, Capella. I'm not necessarily endorsing this. I was just curious if it landed in our top 150 anywhere, and that's, call it lineup 40-ish or so. What are the metrics on that one? Let's... That was a 248-point projection. Spends all your 50 grand. Average cash won is $99. Solid little ROI. 0.06% probability to win, 5.65% probability to land in the top 1%, 19.82% probability to cash. At the top of the board, your top winner is winning average of $223, 0.15% chance of winning, nearly a 10% chance of getting into the top one. That's that lineup there. So for this kind of a slate, it's not really a break it down like spend here, don't value here kind of a deal. Just because it's only 2 games and there's only so many ways to go. So just put it together all the different ways. Yeah, it is. I agree. Hallie and Giannis in a line is definitely going to be popular. But what this is showing is that it's also profitable. Right? These are sorted by ROI across the entire sim of the entire slate. So that combination, while popular, is also going to be a winning combination. And you create enough differentiation like this takes all of that into account. So that is definitely a top combo of the day. As would be Dame and Giannis together. Oops. That one didn't have it. Some of these do. Dame not playing will create some interesting situations here. And it seems like it just, I don't know, feel-wise, I feel like he's not going to play. Let's jump over to the FanDuel board real quick, and then I'm going to punch out, get some lineups built for these things. FanDuel, play wherever you want. We don't care. We're FanDuel. Trey and Dame and Buddy and Franz and Bruce, Giannis, Goga. Not a lot of differentiation between a lot of these lineups at the top. My gosh. You can see just like, minor changes between each of these things. Some commonality of construction here for sure. Franz, a lot of Giannis. A pretty fair smattering of Obi that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Again, Obi comes up on FanDuel 13.3% of the time in winners, 7.71% of the time in top ones. But it looks like when he hits, I didn't realize that was that blurry. Just do that. Make life easier. Nope, it didn't. Why didn't that make it clear? God damn. Probably wanted to zoom in to make it clear. And now it's just, yeah. All right. So yeah, it seems like Obi's, despite the frequency at which he's hitting the board, when he's hitting it, it seems like he's hitting it fairly hard. He's landing in a lot of these very top of the board lineups. Out of the top 150, look how frequently he's here for a guy who's only landing in the winning lineup 13% of the time. So that's interesting. When Obi goes off, he's having a day. Top lineups on FanDuel, average winner, average cash one, a little bit less average cash one than on the DK slate. Higher prize pool over there, obviously. A little bit more of an opportunity to win, probability-wise, 0.25% of the time for that top lineup versus 0.15% of the time. 13% probability with this top lineup to be in a top 1%er. But yeah, it's a lot of what was expected based on those numbers. This one's got Tyrese and Dame and Giannis in it, and Franz Wagner. Obi and Goga as big man, Bruce Brown, DeAndre Hunter. Yeah, it's 3 stars and whoever kind of a day on the FanDuel slate. Tyrese, Dame, Paolo, DeJounte Murray in with them, so that's four A players, A minus kind of players, or 2 A pluses or solid A's and 2 A minuses kind of a lineup. You can get to a lot on FanDuel. Throwback says, I thought this was my television. I was squinting. Yeah, it's different different zoom levels and different window sizes on all of these different things. So it's just, when I change from one to the other, it's a problem. But hopefully, now that I realize I can zoom in a little bit and clear things up a little bit more, just able to show less at the same time. Ryan S. asks, you got a quick rundown of some of the standouts you missed the show. There is a rewind button, my friend, but just for you, Ryan S., real quick, I'll jump back over to that NBA board. I assume you're asking about NBA. NFL was at the top of the show and you missed it. Let's get off of here. I forget where you play, Ryan. I'm going to do it by DraftKings. So by win rate, Bogdan is very, very relevant. He's also relevant on FanDuel. A lot of these guys are relevant on both sites. The most relevant top of the board guy across both sites is Giannis, which is an easy first click. Nobody minds playing Giannis. Markelle Fultz is coming up a lot, assuming that he plays at 5,100. He's going to be very, very relevant to the DraftKings slate, 52% of the time in top lineups. Jalen Smith at 41% in top ones, 38% in winners is an interesting value square, 4,100. Same token, Sadiq Bey for 4,300 at the forward spots. Comes up basically the same 40-ish% of the time as another value option. Another value guy from that same Atlanta lineup, 4,900 for DeAndre Hunter. All three of those guys were coming up a little bit in those sim lineups. Dame is very important over there if he plays, but he seems like he might not go. Then you get to Paolo, you can get to Trey, you get to DeJounte Murray. All of those guys 20+% of the time in top lineups. And then you're just filling in with a lot of value guys that look very similar through these guys that are in the 20s and 30s. So I think that's about it, guys. Coming up on 5:23. It was a fun one. Pushing nearly a 2-hour show on the split, multifaceted, multi-hat. Hopefully not a hat on a hat, but just wearing multiple hats kind of a thing. Would have thought it was a good one. Covered a lot of ground. Now it's time to go out there and actually build these lineups. Hopefully we get some of that news over the next couple of minutes. Let me see. Let's reload the underdog feed here real quick. See if anything popped. A lot of Friday news. Gordon Hayward probable. Nick Claxton out. Cam Johnson probable. Ben Simmons questionable. Derek Lively questionable. Tyler Hero missing a few weeks. No news relevant to tonight whatsoever to talk about. Jump over to our pals and watch their live before lock show. I'm sure they'll have all the news that's fit to print. I might even jump over there and fire it up just in case. I'll get a projections update as anything comes relevant. I'll update for any line movement and so on and so forth. So check the site for that. Hang out in the Discord, ask any questions in there. Otherwise, guys, have a great night. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. And we'll be back tomorrow. See you tomorrow for football. We will probably do the full marathon show tomorrow, the full main slate breakdown show tomorrow. Seems like the event that I'm going to on Saturday is going to be like squarely in the middle of the day, and I don't know what time it's going to end or anything. So probably going to do that tomorrow, but keep an eye out. And obviously we'll be back, of course, for the full slate for basketball tomorrow too. So it'll be a big day tomorrow. All right, that's it, guys. See ya. Good boy.